All right, next we have Florida. Their line is set at 9. 9 wins. Obviously, they lost Kyle Trask, replaced him with Emory Jones, the talented quarterback who's been waiting in the wings. Damian Pierce is back at running back, and they added Demarcus Bowman, the former five-star transfer from Clemson. They did lose most of their receiving production, and their receiver recruiting has been less than excellent. But Justin Shorter, Xavier Henderson, and Jacob Copeland are very talented players, not all proven. Todd Grantham is the defensive coordinator once again after a pretty bad season by Florida standards. And then, like, they do have some stars on defense still: Zachary Carter, Brenton Cox, Kyer Elam. Those are the big names. They get Alabama and LSU from the West, but we're getting ahead of ourselves here. Just looking at the team, who they have to replace. This is a Dan Mullen team. It does seem like he always figures the offense out. Do you believe he'll do that again? What are you looking for this Florida team this year?
Oh, this one's really hard. The number at 9 is a really good number because it makes me want to go over so badly. I want to go over. I do have the over officially for the show. I have the over, but I do want to bring this up. They had last year. They had Kyle Trask. They had Kyle Pitts. They had Kadarius Toney. They had big names. It was probably the best Florida offense we've seen since '08 and '09 with under Tebow and Dan Mullen and Urban Meyer. They went 8-4. They were 8-4 last year. So, yeah, I want to go over like so badly. You mentioned the brutal crossover that they get from the West, which they always have LSU. LSU is their permanent crossover, but then to get Alabama also. Alabama does go to the Swamp. It's a home game for them. They go to LSU, but for me, those are 2 losses. I already said I think Georgia will beat them, so that puts you at 9-3. You're like, that's your limit. I have them going over mainly because it's a whole number. I know that I can push that. I don't think they'll lose more than that. I don't think they'll lose more than that. Uncertain because they go to Missouri in the second to last week of the season. That's a tricky game. Missouri's sneaky good. Yeah. Officially, I'm going over because I have to.
How would you feel about this team if they had, say, Mike Elko, a defensive coordinator, instead of Todd Grantham?
Well, okay. The short answer there is that Todd Grantham clearly has blackmail on Dan Mullen. That's the short answer. There is no other reason for. Georgia has actually hired Todd Grantham as our DC and then proceeded to fire him. There is no reason why he should still be there. He is the reason why they did not. They could have won an SEC championship last year. They were that good, and just to have just to be kind of clueless a little bit on defense. You could almost blame the loss against LSU on them. Just defensive sloppiness, for lack of a better word, just lack of execution. And it happened regularly. They have a coverage bust every 2 or 3 plays, it seems. So no, they had an elite team last year, and Todd Grantham's, I think maybe he cost him a couple of wins. I'll say he cost them a couple of wins. I don't really understand why he's there. I would feel much different if they had, say, you mentioned a Mike Elko there, a defensive mind, even Barry Odom, the guy at Arkansas. Hire a guy like that. You'd feel way better about it then. I think that's kind of what's keeping them from getting to the next step, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree. To me, it's a very big year for Todd Grantham. Like, I think he has to turn out a really good defense to keep his job. I just don't understand why they kept him. And I know, like, scoring defense is not a perfect number, but I liked it better last year because there were no out-of-conference games to screw up the statistics. Last year, they gave up 31 points per game, which was 8th in the SEC. That's unacceptable for a team like Florida. It's just, you can't do that, especially when you have potentially your best team in a decade. But they did, and that's how they went. You mentioned 8-4, and that should not have. If you ask any college football fan what Florida's record was last year, I guarantee you most of them would say it was better than 8-4. It just felt like a really good, legit top 10 team. And yeah, obviously the defense takes the blame for that. And man, like you mentioned the blackmail, it almost feels like it has to be something. Maybe it's just a lot of faith by Dan Mullen in Todd Grantham, but to me, that's the big thing. They have stars in defense. We mentioned Zachary Carter, Brenton Cox, Kyer Elam. These are really good players. You can build a really good defense around players like that. And the recruiting has not been at Georgia or Alabama's level, but it's still been at a top 10 level for the most part. They've had a few classes lower than that, but on a 4-year rolling average, this is a top 10 team talent wise. So, gun to your head, you feel like they figured this out?
No, I think mainly that's because Todd Grantham's there. And quick note about just kind of about the quarterback situation in general. It is going to be Emory Jones. It looks like, even though Anthony Richardson, kind of a young, kind of talented kid. I think he's actually a junior, so maybe not that young anymore. But they're still kind of duking it out, and I think the goal is just to get one of those two to a really good place. And everyone assumes it's going to be Emory Jones. I think people were kind of drawing the comparison that, he's kind of what Dan Mullen likes. Like Emory Jones is kind of more that run first option that he had maybe with, going way back to Nick Fitzgerald, Dak Prescott, even Tim Tebow, just kind of almost a run first threat. Not sure. Yeah. Not sure how I feel about Emory Jones. I've watched him play a number of times, quite a bit in person actually. And just was never overly impressed with how he threw the football. So yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting. Dan Mullen he's an excellent quarterbacks coach. I don't happen to like Dan Mullen, this, but he does an excellent job of coaching up quarterbacks. I think it's going to be very interesting to see how that folds out, because I have maybe a little bit more reservations for Emory Jones than most other people do.
Sure. I actually am not very concerned about Emory Jones. I just feel like they'll figure out how to have a fairly effective offense. To me, the biggest question is the defense. And we mentioned Alabama, LSU. Obviously, they play Georgia. I have this team going under. I do think they will go 9-3, but I think the under is more likely than the over. So if I would bet this game, I would expect to get my money back because of a push. But I do think that if it's not 9-3, 8-4 is slightly more likely than 10-2. So our first disagreement, finally. I don't like when we agree on everything. So you're slightly on the over, I'm slightly on the under with Florida. Any more thoughts on them?
Yeah, I'm not a whole lot. I think just with these SEC schedules, it's always the trap games that get you. Like, we can talk about the big ones, LSU, Alabama, and Georgia. Like, we can talk about those all we want. Those are going to be what they're going to be, and they may sneak one of those out. There's a chance they beat LSU, chance they beat Georgia. Don't think they'll beat Alabama, but I think the likelihood of them dropping a game that you don't see, maybe at Kentucky or at Missouri late in the year, something like that, I think is a real possibility for them, and would scare me if I would be betting. So I would not be betting on Florida at all this year.
Sure.